My name is Maya Collins. I am 33 years old. I'm a licensed physical therapist at Carolina's Rehabilitation Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have spent 8 years helping people learn how to move again after their bodies have stopped cooperating. Stroke patients relearning how to walk, athletes rebuilding after surgery, elderly patients recovering enough independence to return home instead of a care facility. It is precise and patient work, and I have never once taken lightly the license that allows me to do it. So when the North Carolina Physical Therapy Board called my office on a Wednesday morning and asked to speak with me regarding a fraud investigation connected to my credentials, I felt something clarify in my chest before I even knew the full details. Not panic. Clarity. The same clarity I feel when a patient's chart does not match what I am seeing in front of me. Something is wrong, I know what kind of wrong it is, and I know exactly what to do next. I told the caller I was stepping away from a patient session. I closed my office door. I listened to everything she said without interrupting once. When she finished, I thanked her for contacting me directly. Then I hung up. I sat for exactly 4 minutes. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first one ended my sister's insurance claim. The second one made sure she could not file another one. Before I tell you what those calls were and what happened in the weeks that followed, tell me where you are watching from right now. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know how far this story travels. Star. Growing up in Greensboro, North Carolina, my sister Diane and I were close in the way siblings are close when the family around them is unstable enough that they become each other's primary reference point. Our mother worked rotating shifts at a textile distribution center, and our father had what our grandmother called a restless spirit, which was the polite family way of describing a man who loved his children genuinely, but could not sustain the ordinary responsibilities of daily life for longer than 8 or 9 months at a stretch before something pulled him toward a different city or a different plan or a different version of himself that he was certain would work out better than the last one. We never went hungry. I want to say that because it matters. Our mother made sure of it. But there was a particular kind of instability in our house that had nothing to do with food or shelter and everything to do with the feeling that the ground under your feet was never entirely reliable. Diane handled that instability by becoming charming. She learned early that a wide smile and the right tone of voice could smooth over almost anything, could make adults feel seen and appreciated in a way that made them want to help her, could turn a difficult situation into one where people walked away feeling like they had done something generous. She was not calculating about it, not at first. It was a genuine gift, the ability to read a room and give people what they needed to feel comfortable. It only became something else slowly, over years, as she discovered that the same skill that made people like her could also be used to make people overlook things she did not want them to examine too closely. I handled the instability differently. I needed to understand how things worked. I needed to know the rules and follow them precisely because in a house where the adults were not always reliable, rules were the only thing that stayed constant. I became the student who read the assignment instructions 3 times before starting, the teenager who called ahead to confirm appointments, the young woman who kept a planner and meant it. Our mother called Diane the social one and me the serious one, and she meant both as compliments even though one of them felt like a compliment and the other felt like a category. By the time we were in high school, the dynamic between us was well established. Diane moved through the world with ease and confidence and a talent for landing on her feet regardless of what she had done to get there. I moved through it carefully, precisely, building things that were meant to last. We loved each other. I want to say that clearly because it is also true and because what came later could make it easy to forget. We were not enemies growing up. We were sisters who had been shaped by the same circumstances into very different people, and for a long time that complementarity worked. She helped me loosen up when I was too rigid. I helped her think through consequences when she was moving too fast. It was not until we were adults, until the stakes were real and the decisions were permanent, that the difference in how we moved through the world stopped being complementary and started being dangerous. I decided on physical therapy in my sophomore year of college, after volunteering at a rehabilitation center near campus and spending 3 hours watching a physical therapist work with a 62-year-old man who had survived a stroke and was trying to relearn how to button his own shirt. The patience and precision of it, The way progress was measured in millimeters and celebrated in full felt like the right language for everything I had always been. I applied to graduate programs that year and got into 3. I chose the strongest clinical program and graduated with honors and passed my boards on the first attempt and accepted a position in Charlotte because the practice was excellent and because Charlotte was far enough from Greensboro that I could build something that was entirely mine. Diane stayed in Greensboro. She worked a series of jobs that she was always either about to leave or had just left, always for reasons that were reasonable individually and formed a pattern collectively. Customer service manager at a furniture company until the regional director made things uncomfortable. Office coordinator at a medical billing firm until the ownership changed and the new culture was not a good fit. Marketing assistant at a local real estate office until the commission structure changed and it stopped making financial sense. Each departure had an explanation. The explanations were always credible. I believed most of them. I sent money when she asked, which was more often than I mentioned to anyone. I told myself I was in a better financial position and helping family was what you did. What I was slower to see was that Diane's financial position never actually improved despite the help, that each new job started with the same optimism and ended with the same story, and that the money I sent disappeared into a situation that had no floor I could identify. 3 months before the licensing board called me, Diane had been in a minor car accident. She was not seriously hurt. She told me about it in a phone call that lasted 20 minutes and included enough detail about the other driver's fault and the insurance company's initial response that I remember thinking she had researched the situation carefully. She said her back had been bothering her since the accident. She said her doctor had recommended physical therapy. She said the insurance claim was being processed. She asked if I knew anything about how PT billing worked because she wanted to make sure she was not being taken advantage of. I explained the basics. I answered her questions. I did not think about that conversation again until the licensing board told me why they were calling. Star. The investigator's name was Carol Simmons, and she had the measured professional voice of someone who delivered difficult information regularly and had learned to do it without editorial. She told me that a physical therapy billing claim had been submitted to an insurance company under my license number for 12 sessions of rehabilitative treatment provided to a Diane Reeves at an address in Greensboro over the previous 6 weeks. She told me the insurance company had flagged the claim during a routine audit because the billing address did not match any registered practice associated with my license. She told me the board had been notified and was conducting a preliminary investigation before determining next steps. She asked if I had treated a patient named Diane Reeves. I said no. She asked if I had authorized anyone to bill under my license number. I said no. She asked if I was aware of how my license number had been obtained. I said I had a strong suspicion and that I would be providing documentation to support that suspicion within 24 hours. She thanked me. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my office and I thought about the phone call 3 months earlier. I thought about Diane's questions about PT billing. I thought about how specific those questions had been, how procedural. I thought about the way she had asked if I knew how the billing codes worked, which had seemed at the time like a reasonable question from someone unfamiliar with the process and which now sounded like research. My license number is not a secret. It is publicly listed on the state board's provider database, accessible to anyone who searches my name. She had not needed to steal it. She had simply needed to use it. And she had apparently used it to submit 12 sessions of physical therapy treatment that I had never provided to a patient I had never met at an address in Greensboro where no licensed practice existed. The insurance claim was for $4,800. I looked up the billing codes she had used. They were accurate. She had done her research carefully. That more than anything else was the part that stayed with me longest. Not the betrayal, the preparation. Star. The first call I made was to my malpractice and professional liability attorney, a woman named Patricia Holt, who I had retained when I opened my private practice 3 years earlier, and who I had hoped never to need for anything more serious than a contract review. I told her everything in the order it had happened. She asked 3 clarifying questions. Then she told me what she was going to do, and in what order. She would contact the insurance company's fraud division directly and provide documentation confirming I had not treated the claimant and had not authorized anyone to bill under my credentials. She would contact the licensing board with a formal written statement and offer full cooperation with their investigation. She would send a preservation letter to Diane's address notifying her that all communications and records related to the claim should be retained pending legal review. She would file a formal fraud report with the North Carolina Department of Insurance. She told me the insurance company would almost certainly pursue their own criminal referral given the amount and the deliberate nature of the fraud. She asked if I understood what that meant for my sister. I said yes. She said, "Are you sure you want to proceed fully?" I said, "Patricia, she used my license." She said yes, she did. I said then yes, I am sure. The second call I made was to Diane. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was warm in that particular way it always was at the beginning of a conversation before she knew which direction it was going. She asked how I was. I told her the licensing board had called me that morning. The warmth left her voice so fast it was almost physical. I told her I knew about the claim. I told her I knew about the 12 sessions and the billing codes and the $4,800. I told her Patricia Holt had already contacted the insurance company's fraud division and the board and the Department of Insurance. I told her a preservation letter would arrive at her address within 48 hours. She started to speak. I said, "Diane, I am not calling to have a conversation. I am calling so that you hear this from me before you hear it from someone else." There was a long silence. Then she said, "Maya, please." I was desperate. My back really did hurt. I just needed the sessions covered, and I knew you would not mind if I said, "Diane." I said you used my license to commit insurance fraud. That is a federal offense. I said I am sorry that you were in pain, and I am sorry that you felt you had no other option, but what you did was not a misunderstanding, and it was not a family matter. It was a crime committed against my professional credentials, and I cannot absorb that for you. She started crying. I waited until she stopped. Then I said, "I hope you get the help you need." Then I hung up. Star. The investigation moved with the particular efficiency that insurance fraud cases move when the evidence is clean and the victim is cooperative. Within 2 weeks, the insurance claim had been denied and flagged in the company's fraud database. Within 3 weeks, the Department of Insurance had opened a formal case. Within 6 weeks, Diane had been contacted by investigators and had retained her own attorney. Patricia kept me updated at each stage with the detached professional precision I had come to rely on. She told me Diane's attorney had indicated she intended to cooperate fully, which Patricia said typically meant she was hoping cooperation would reduce the consequences. The licensing board cleared my credentials within 30 days of my initial statement. They sent a formal letter confirming that no action would be taken against my license and that the investigation had established I was a victim rather than a participant in the fraud. I framed that letter and put it on the wall of my office, not out of pride, out of accuracy. I had built that license over 8 years of graduate training and clinical hours and board examinations and continuing education requirements. It was not a symbol. It was a structure. And when someone used it without my knowledge to do something I would never have done, having the record corrected formally and permanently was not optional. My mother called twice during the investigation period. The first call was to tell me she hoped I was not going to let this destroy the family. I told her I had not destroyed anything. The second call was to tell me Diane was struggling and that family should find a way through hard things together. I told her I agreed with that and that finding a way through did not mean absorbing the consequences of a federal crime on someone else's behalf. She went quiet. Then she said, "You have always been so hard." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Mom, I have always been precise. There is a difference." She did not have an answer for that, and we said goodbye and I went back to work. Star. Diane's case resolved 8 months after the licensing board first called me. She pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and received a suspended sentence, 3 years probation, full restitution of the fraudulent claim amount, and a permanent flag on her record that would appear in any future background check. Her attorney had negotiated well given the circumstances. Patricia told me the outcome was on the lenient end of what the evidence supported. I said I understood. I did not attend any of the proceedings. I followed the case through Patricia's updates and through the single detailed email Diane sent me 4 months after her plea, an email I have read several times since because it was the most honest communication I had ever received from her. She did not ask for forgiveness in it. She explained what she had been thinking, which was not an excuse but was at least the truth, which was more than I had expected. She said she had told herself I would not find out, or that if I did I could fix it quickly, because I was good at fixing things. She said she had not thought about what it would mean for my license, or my practice, or my career, because she had spent so long assuming that my competence was a kind of shield that extended over her too. She said she understood now that it did not, that my competence was mine, that my license was mine, that my professional identity was not a resource available to her without asking. She said she was sorry. I believed her. I did not write back immediately. I waited 3 weeks. Then I wrote 4 sentences. I told her I had read her email. I told her I believed she was sorry. I told her I did not know yet what our relationship would look like going forward. I told her I hoped she was getting support. She wrote back 1 line. She said, "Thank you for reading it. We have not spoken since then." I do not know if that is permanent. Some distances need time before you can measure them accurately. What I know is that I go to work every morning, and I help people learn how to move again, and I bill every session under my own license for work I have actually done, and I sleep without the low hum of something being wrong that I cannot yet identify. The board letter is still on my wall. My credentials are intact. My practice is mine. If someone in your life has decided that your professional identity, your credentials, your name, your license is simply one more resource they can access without asking, you are allowed to make the calls. You are allowed to cooperate fully with the investigation. You are allowed to let the process work without softening it to protect someone who did not protect you. What would you have done with that phone call? Tell me in the comments. And if this story reached something in you, you already know what to do.